Hi everyone, and welcome to day 4 wrap up of the Risk Awareness Week. Um, if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and you don't know what Risk Awareness Week is, it is an annual uh, online event that has been online long before COVID. It was always intended as an online event because I hated to travel and I wanted to bring global speakers to one platform, one location, and it is really difficult to do it offline logistically. So 3 years ago, I created Risk Awareness Week, which since became quite a useful platform for learning about new thinking in risk-based decision making, project management, neuroeconomics, probability theory, decision science, and so on. So all of the tools that a risk professional should have in his belt, and a lot of practical step-by-step demonstrations and case studies on how risk thinking, risk mathematics can be applied in solving important business and life decisions. And today, day 4, by the way, all of the replays are still available, and there is day 5 tomorrow, so there'll be more workshops tomorrow. You can find all of the replays at 2021.riskawarenessweek.com and watch the workshops that you liked. And you can tell which workshops the audience liked because they upvote the workshops, and whichever one gets the most likes, you can guess that that was the most popular one. Now today we had quite a narrow topic, which was risk management in project management context. And because this is such a narrow field, a lot less likes that I'm seeing compared to all the previous days. And that's not because the workshops today were any worse than they were yesterday or Tuesday or Monday. But it's just that the audience is much more specialized. And what this means, if you're watching this, and by the way, since this is live, you can you can ask questions, you can write comments wherever you're watching. I will be able to see them in a single platform. So I do encourage you to write comments, ask questions, maybe just say hello, tell us where you're watching from today. So, day 4 was dedicated to project management, and I am not an expert on project risk management. I have a lot of respect for project risk management because it is such a separate field. Sorry, it's such a separate field of study. The underlying mathematics is the same. You can either model uncertainty as the volatility of assumptions in your work breakdown structure, or as um, binomial or Poisson events that affect certain parts of your schedule or capex budget. So the mathematics is very similar to how we would calculate an NPV at risk, for example, or a strategic decision at risk, or just run any kind of stochastic decision tree. But the software is different. The kind of the common distributions are different, and there's a lot more uncertainty that you can capture by just using Monte Carlo. So there are parametric models, and there are different approaches to modeling uncertainty, different kinds of uncertainties, as Glenn Aleman, one of our speakers today, will tell you in his replay. There are different approaches to modeling uncertainty. Some are more simple, like reference class approaches, and some are more complicated, like what the AACE in North America proposes. But the biggest irony in all of this, and this is why yesterday I was saying that I'm very contrarian in my approach, and the reason why I decided to do this day on project risk management is twofold. First, we as the corporation, as one of the biggest fertilizer producers in the world, we have a large portfolio of projects, and we have a dedicated project risk manager. So I wanted to bring all of the best speakers for him to watch, and for the project management teams to watch. And I hope you've watched at least some of the sessions. I know our project risk manager has watched many of the sessions, because I'm very thankful to him leaving dozens of comments below the videos, because he actually attempted to highlight some of the key takeaways from the sessions that he watched. And I'm sure by the end of the week or sometime next week, he'll watch all of the sessions, because the speakers have been, very carefully selected to bring something truly amazing to the project management profession. So one of the reasons was very kind of self-serving bias. I wanted to bring some of the best project risk management experts to our project portfolio, and we have quite a large project portfolio across the European part of our business, and in Brazil. And the second part was, I absolutely hate what PMI does in terms of risk management. I just think it's an embarrassment to the risk profession on how year after year in PMBOK, PMI continues to push this agenda of having qualitative risk registers as the pinnacle of risk thinking in project management, and somehow that should solve your contingency decisions and improve your project on time and on schedule performance. So since I hated it so much, I decided to bring everything that I could find that is literally the opposite. So a little bit, and if you agree or disagree, write something in the comments. I would be interested in seeing your thoughts on that. Um, to the workshops now. So first, unlike the other days where I knew and I was very familiar with the underlying content of the presentation. Project risk management is not my area of expertise. That's why we have a dedicated project risk manager who is very experienced in that field. So I will give you a high level overview of what each session was about and why you would want to watch a replay of it. So first two sessions that I wanted to talk about is Glenn Aleman. I think well, first of all, he's very experienced um, in North America, working on some of the most complex projects and applying very thorough and interesting quantitative approach to schedule and cost estimation and contingency estimation. And we broke down his session in kind of into two parts. The theoretical kind of principles introduction section was the first one of the day, and then later in the day you must, if you watch the first part, you must watch the second part, which was the actual practical application of managing uncertainties in cost schedule and technical risk. So Glenn had two sessions, must watch together, because they're all part of kind of the same message. Then we had Christian Smart talk about a case study that applied integrated cost and schedule risk analysis at NASA, and how they've kind of they've took the schedule risk analysis and the cost risk analysis that historically has been run separately, and they've integrated it into a single metric that you could track and map for projects. So this you know many organizations since have been doing that, and that's part of your best practice on how you would approach project risk management. It's a huge improvement on a colorful heat map of project risks that PMI would suggest us having. Yuri Rodygin is representing Canadian risk management. He's actually from my hometown in Russia, and it's, again, complete coincidence how we kind of found each other on LinkedIn. Um, but he is a big proponent of nonlinear Monte Carlo simulation, which is kind of a much more advanced approach to simulating uncertainty in project environment. And he did a specific and a very kind of timely and relevant to the overall green theme of the conference case study on modeling environmental constraints on capital projects. So again, as is with all of the sessions, it's it is about environmental constraints for 10%, but for 90%, it's actually applying stochastic thinking to project decisions. And I think that's the kind of the overall theme of day four is thinking linearly, thinking deterministically, thinking in averages, is not going to help you achieve a good performance in terms of on time, on budget, and quality. Uh, Deterministic thinking is highly unlikely to give you sufficient level of depth and detail and information to estimate your contingency. And there are better approaches. We don't have to recreate the wheel. There are books written about it, and some of the best and most practical case studies have been shared with you. And interestingly, the geography of day four is quite huge. So we went US, Canada, US. Yehuda Sapphire was the next presenter from Israel, and he gave you another case study on how to apply the same stochastic decision making in civil engineering projects, how to make project and schedule risk analysis more relevant in civil engineering. Again, 10% about civil engineering, 90% about the application of the actual tools and techniques of stochastic risk analysis in the project environment. And even if you're watching this right now and you're not in project risk management, there are people in your organization that are project managers, cost engineers, project risk managers that are responsible for, millions or billions of portfolio of projects, construction engineers, and all of them would benefit greatly from watching some of the sessions that happened during day four. So even if it's not relevant to you, like to me, it is less relevant to me because we have a dedicated project risk manager. Um, I forwarded it, and then he forwarded it to everyone we knew within the organization who were responsible for projects, because they need to see this. They need to kind of start getting familiar with how do you move from your risk profile, project risk profile, to your contingencies, both in terms of the schedule contingency and the budget contingency. And then how do you take that information and plug it into your NPV model so you can calculate the NPV at risk, not by just going, capex minus 10% plus 40%, but doing something much more thorough and statistical and evidence based. Then the next session was from Gregory Carroll, who is from Australia, and he talked about applying artificial intelligence in the context of risk management. And I think the key takeaway from that session was that we've actually, it's not something new or scary. We actually have a lot of the instances, and Gregory shared quite a few of those. We have a lot of instances in our life where we can apply advanced math, artificial intelligence right now to the data that we have, to the decisions that we have. So that was a nice presentation, a bridge into kind of the future of quantitative risk analysis. And then the final session for the day was from William Davis. who kind of did a very, he did, first of all, he talked a bit about the Excel template that he created, which you can download absolutely for free, that allows you to add uncertainty to project schedules and budgets using either beta distribution, a normal distribution, or log normal distribution comes out in the near future. And he then showed a kind of a practical exercise on how a practical case study on how to do it. So it was a nice kind of intro into the into the project risk management world. And again, I think the kind of the overall conclusion for the day was uh, unless you take uncertainty into account when you're planning and forecasting your project schedule, your project budget, and you take uncertainty into account when you make project decisions, including, for example, contingency calculation, reserves, risk capital allocation, unless you use proper stochastic plus parametric plus other techniques, you are very unlikely to create realistic budgets and schedules. Life is so complex, and project environment kind of adds to that complexity greatly. So you do not want to use basic last centuries techniques of qualitative risk analysis. Now, the biggest takeaway from me in the project risk management is that some of the inputs, some of the assumptions are statistical, but a lot of the assumptions are expert based, either through the industry consultation, risk sessions with the engineers on the ground, or the vendors or service providers, EPC contractors. There's one thing that strikes me as very unique about project risk management compared to other risk managers like market risk management or credit risk management, for example, or even operational risk management. One thing that strikes me as different, and if you disagree, do write in the comments. You don't have to agree with me. One thing that strikes me about project risk management is that it is very heavily influenced by the input of humans. And that means that the third day, yesterday, workshops are so critical for the project risk managers, probably more critical for the project risk managers than any other risk managers, because once you start getting estimates from experts, you need to calibrate them, you need to aggregate them, you need to figure out, well, how do you, yeah, the Perth distributions, Perth or triangular distributions are probably the most common in project risk management. And that scares the living hell out of me because they're bounded, first of all. And that means you literally kind of, you're not even allowing the possibility of extreme cases in certain risks. And of course, not everybody is using Perth and triangular. Some do use unbounded distributions exactly for that reason. And once you start relying on, sorry, let me just mute someone in WhatsApp who is annoying me with with messages. Um, Once you start relying heavily on expert opinions, you have to take great care on how you first calibrate them, but then how you backtest and validate the information in your risk analysis. And that's what day 3 of Risk Awareness Week was dedicated to. So it is much more relevant to project risk managers than literally probably any other risk managers out there. And Andre, thank you for sending comments. Um, it, it's an interesting thought. I'm sure I'm sure you mean something different to what it kind of reads, because it's a VUCA world. Sure, it is. It kind of always has been. World has always been stochastic, and many things are random, and that's basically how I think the whole civilization developed by just a set of random events. Um, but I don't think there's little you can do about it, and adapting thinking and behavior is obviously number one, because there's so much uncertainty that you can you're the one who adapts and reacts quicker. He's the one who's kind of in the prime position, and I think that's the again the definition of evolution. Whoever adapts quickest and better it evolves. But then there's a big difference between the perfect state and kind of the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. And what I think we're saying, and Doug Hubbard has a very nice um, concept on that. He calls it "beat the bear fallacy." And it goes something like two people going hiking, and one is putting the trekking shoes on, the other one is putting the runners on, sports shoes. And the first one says, well, why are you putting the runners on? And the second one says, well, there's a bear in the forest, I heard. And the first one says, well, silly you, you're not going to outrun the bear. And then the second one goes, well, I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you. And I think that's the idea behind trying to quantify uncertainty. When we start with the deterministic scenario or a project schedule or a cost estimate or anything based on a single number estimates, it's even worse if it's just averages, based on averages and not just a specific scenario. If we start with that, by just adding a little bit of uncertainty, whichever way we add it, through a triangular or Perth distribution, or literally any other technique. Once we start running scenarios or sensitivities, or once we start simulating, we have already improved our decision making. We're still far from making a perfect decision, and in project management, especially in smaller projects, it is kind of common to track or assess your quality of performance by the difference in days and weeks and dollars on how far off you were off the original plan. By how much did you overspend the budget, and by how many days you've kind of overspent the original schedule estimate. And I don't think the end game is zero. I don't think the end game is to create the schedule and the plan and finish on that day. I think the end game is to reduce that difference. And the more we can reduce that difference, the better the performance of the techniques that we use. And today, a number of speakers, basically every speaker who was presented today, shared different techniques for mathematically improving your planning and your scheduling and cost estimation to reduce that difference to something that would be kind of within the shareholders' risk appetite. Um, so adopting and being prepared is a given, and I totally agree. That's in our human lives. That's what we should be doing. We should be very kind of agile in our thing, ready for anything. And whenever we see something happening, our brain should not ignore it as it does most of the time, and comes up with excuses on why it will not happen to us, but rather we should react to it and position ourselves to either lessen the impact or take advantage of it. But then there are also many risk management techniques that can improve our decision making, and you've talked about, Andrew, about many of those techniques for reducing the groupthink. For example, yesterday, there are many techniques, including project risk analysis, that we can use to not only be more agile and ready, but also to have better initial plans and schedules, so we then don't have to come up with many excuses why things get delayed. And to me, project risk analysis is a big sanity check and kind of stress test of assumptions, because we come up with some sort of promise to the shareholder that we will build this for this much money and this quickly, and then somebody needs to stress test that against reality, against historical performances, against known volatilities, and make that promise more achievable. Because some of the initial promises, and one of my friends, a project risk manager, he had a very nice case study where the original promise had a 16% chance of being successfully finished on time and on budget. But then the risk analysis kind of stress tested that and said, well, okay, if we're going to promise something to the shareholders, we have to make the promises real. And the actual promise that they went with had a 68% chance of being achieved on time and on budget, and that was relatively close to what actually happened at the end. So that was day 4. If you're not in project risk management, recommend the sessions that were happening today to somebody who is in project risk management. Because if your project managers or people working on your large IT or construction or infrastructure projects still think that risk management means having a risk register in a heat map, they are completely mistaken. And we have 7 case studies today to prove exactly that. So any other questions, thoughts, feel free to write. I do have some interesting statistic for you. Today, every day I ask for a feedback question. And yesterday, 86% of you said that online format is working for you. And today, I've asked a different question. I said, do you feel comfortable asking questions online or writing comments for that matter? And we have empirically proven that most of you are not, because I can see how many people are watching. And that does not correlate with the number of questions that I'm seeing in front of you. So only 73% of you said you do feel comfortable asking questions, but I think my empirical test shows that a large portion of those 73% are not telling the truth, because otherwise they would be asking more questions. By the way, I do appreciate every single person who does post questions and comments under the video. And even if you don't have a question, just say thank you to the speakers. I think they'll appreciate it. And share something that you liked for the other people watching the sessions. Share some of your highlights. Don't be shy. Dennis, what is PDC? Don't be shy. Don't hold back. I mean, this is what Risk Awareness Week is all about. It's about openness and transparency and sharing practical case studies, and not talking about um, feel good high level statements, and not being Captain Obvious. Um, okay, what is PDCA? Is that cycle where you plan, do, and then what does your question mean? Because PDCA cycle is inherently inbuilt in like most of the standards on the planet. So what do you mean is somebody is using it? I think by default, I don't think PDCA cycle was created as an innovation. I think humans inherently follow those logical steps because it's logical, and then somebody just for marketing purposes decided to call it a PDCA cycle and put it in a nice diagram, if that's what you mean. So I don't think uh, it's a technique that you have to specifically use. I think it's just a normal logical way of humans approaching a situation. Okay, what is PDRI? Dennis, I have a feeling you don't get the you don't get my questions. When you're writing abbreviations, I have no idea what you're talking about, and it doesn't matter if you change abbreviations. I still have no idea what you're talking about. I think the message I was trying to say is that do not write in abbreviations. Ask a proper question. And any more thoughts and questions? Shayla, thank you. And thank you. I appreciate that you are actually one of the few people that says thank you to all of the workshops that you liked, and thank you for pointing out that replays do help with repeating it. I think that's one of the important messages is that replays are available forever. So if you want to kind of watch and rewatch and stop, pause, rewind, record something. And by the way, you're more than welcome to reach out to every single speaker. And some of the speakers are sharing, yeah, actually, I think most of the speakers share their details. So you can actually contact them, their websites and their emails to ask them questions offline. By the way, which is, some of you are doing that. So again, very much thank you. Some of you are not writing questions. Some of you are writing directly to the speakers because speakers commented to me that they've received questions offline. Well done. Excellent idea. Dennis, thank you. Project definition rating index. Um, I, I don't know what it is because I'm not in project risk management, but if anyone is in the project risk management space, please respond in the comments on LinkedIn, for example, or under this video on the risk awareness website. And maybe somebody is using it. I just don't know enough about it. You can tell me who is the world expert on the project definition rating indexes, and I can invite them next year for the risk awareness week. Is that the class reference class that the Oxford professor in UK does? Is that his books that he wrote on that? I don't know enough about the subject. Any more questions, thoughts? Tomorrow is all about practical applications of tools in decision making. And we have some very interesting case studies on cyber risk. We have my case study on insurance, on how you save your shareholders a lot of money by doing the opposite of what your brokers tell you, because brokers do not understand the very nature of the risk profile that you're trying to place in the market. And there is a very interesting case study on Bayesian decision trees. And let me quickly check what else. What else is tomorrow? Compliance risks, legal and compliance risks. Again, the legal and compliance is a kind of is a big passion for me because this is what I've been doing end of last year, and we found sorry, and we found that stochastic decision trees just do an amazing job at quantifying legal compliance and all the other kind of those uh, difficult to quantify risks. Then of course we have Sam Savage and Ang Wee talk about um, commu- this. God, I forgot the word. Crowdsourcing models and distributions, and how you can actually pull data from external data providers directly into your into your model, and So that again, it's about pandemic, but it's not really about pandemic. It's about the principle of taking the data feed from a government website and helping it drive your daily decisions through stochastic risk analysis. And you can do it exactly this, like you would apply exactly the same approach, not just with pandemics, but with logistical risks or construction risks, and so on and so on. Um, I see Hernan, you're online, so thank you. By the way, if I'm not mistaken, I think you will be talking about a different approach. You're not going to be using stochastic decision trees. You will be using kind of the loss exceedance curve, the sum of distributions for compliance risk. So interesting session. Two different approaches, same result. You can quantify. Um, you can quantify. Decision trees. And then the last session tomorrow is chancification, where Sam Savage will talk about a little bit about the new method of storing stochastic data. And I mean that is just kind of mind blowing stuff. In this much code, you can represent thousands and thousands of trials of uncertain variables, and you can plug it into any model. And the mod like your part of the trouble with quantitative risk analysis, it takes a lot of time and it's quite heavy, and that solves both of those problems. So whatever happens in your life, do not miss Sam Savage's session tomorrow, because we recorded it together with him, and that was just that was just some of the best experience I've had. So until tomorrow, see you, and thank you for joining Risk Awareness Week. If you liked a particular workshop, if you think it is useful for someone in your workplace, share the link. And all you need to do is just share the. By the way, underneath each video broadcast, there are 3 buttons that you can click to share on social media. But then you can share the URL. The URL for that page is exactly the same. It's for registering or watching. It's always the same URL. The beauty of Risk Awareness Week, it's all on the same website. Don't have to go anywhere. Um, uh, Log in once and off you go. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow.